So here we are, sharing secrets of the soil with me, your host, Regenerative. Hello, soil lovers, and welcome to another episode of Secrets of the Soil. I'm your host, Regenerative, and today we're going to dig deeper into the wonderful world of soil. Louise, welcome to the call.
Thank you very much, Ray. So Louisa Kiely, Director, Carbon Farmers of Australia here. And yes, we have been digging into the soil since 2005.
Wow.
Our journey, Ray, started when we were wool growers in the central west of New South Wales. We were growing fine wool in the Mudgee district, and we were chosen as innovative farmers in the days when the CMA it's now the LLS, but in those days it was the CMA. And they chose 11 families to learn about the carbon cycle and farming. And so we were taught over those 20 days about the role that photosynthetic activity, farmers can have. What's the problem? The problem is too much carbon in the air. What do farmers do about that? Every single day, with every single solar panel called a leaf, they are taking that CO2 out of the air. They're drawing it into their trees, they're drawing it into their pastures, and their pastures are taking it down via their roots back down into the soil. And also, farmers control over 58% of the land mass. So for us, we did have a marketing background. We were tree changer farmers. We farmed for very close to 20 years in that district. However, so once we've learned that this was the role that farmers could take, and not just that, as you took carbon out of the air and stored it in trees and back in the soil structure improved, and the soil water holding capacity improved. Now, these are well-known side effects or co-benefits of soil carbon now. It wasn't necessarily the case back in 2005. And so for us, it was, we're doing a good. Farmers can go into drought later, come out of sooner. We had also studied holistic management. So we were doing time-controlled grazing with our sheep flocks. And we saw the benefits of longer rest periods, shorter graze periods. And then we also understood that there would be a market for this. And so our mantra became that farmers should be paid for this service, this ecosystem service that they were doing, and they should be paid fairly for that. And so that's what got us started, Ray, in carbon farming, soil carbon, and the beauty of what the soil can do.
Yeah, I love that. And so this is 2005. Is that when you started Carbon Farmers of Australia, or did that come a little bit later on once you started realising how important carbon was to take out of the atmosphere and put back into the ground?
The first thing we did, Ray, was we formed what we call Carbon Coalition. And that was a lobby group. And that was a lobby group of farmers to go to the politicians and to go to anyone who would listen and say, hey, what about the soil? We think you've forgotten about it, and we think you've forgotten that you may be able to get your fertilizer out of a bag with your nitrogen and all of those things, but there's this really big element called carbon, and we've forgotten about it. And now it's this essential element to mitigate climate change, to help to adapt to climate change. And so we started with the Carbon Coalition. And then because the market started to develop, I held my first carbon conference in 2007. And in that year, I was also chosen as New South Wales Rural runner-up New South Wales Rural Woman of the Year. Wow. So, there was some recognition even back then that it should be done. And then we understood that we had to get this out. We had to help farmers to understand. We had to help policy managers to understand, because the agronomists and the people that were assisting farmers in their soil health weren't understanding the role that this new element, or it's not a new element, but the way that carbon could become so important in their soil health.
I love that timeline in as well because it matches almost identical to Farming Secrets. So there must have been a group of people who were really early to this space of just understanding. Back then, there was no sexy words of like regenerative ag and all this stuff, but it was all about chemical-free farming, nurturing the soil, understanding the biology, looking at the soil under a microscope, stuff that farmers would never thought to have done. And there's obviously this group of early adopters who saw the light of carbon and championed it. How did you build the resilience to stick at this conversation for so long? Because we're talking 15 years later, and I think we're still having the same conversations of like, will this reverse climate change? Will this have an impact? Can it be profitable? So how do you have the resilience to stick at this conversation for so long?
Look, it wasn't easy in those early days, but the problem is that you become passionate. And I know that all of the soil lovers will be in the same boat, Ray. You know, it gets under your skin, it gets in your under your fingernails. And once you sort of get to understand that type of thing, then it pushes you on. You know, we had mentors along the way. We had Christine Jones. We had holistic management. All of those things just kept on telling us. And also in those days, Ray, we actually did believe what the science was saying about the way the climate could change. And children and grandchildren, you know, we wanted to do the best that we could, and especially in a farming sense. We called ourselves Carbon Farmers of Australia because we came from the farmer's point of view, and we still do. And we did not want the farmers to miss out on this opportunity that was there, not just to improve their soil health, but now we're going into biodiversity, and we're going into the much more complex areas. And the more complexity, I know the soil lovers understand this, the more complexity in your soil, the more complexity in your pastures, the greater your resilience. What we've done is we've simplified the systems with the monocultures and the chemical fertilizers. Once you get to that point, droughts knock you over much faster, and it takes a lot longer to come back out of it. So, look, it was tough. It was really tough. And then the market started, and we got methods, and we felt that it was just really important that the farmers were at the centre of this. And I guess, and people used to say, geez, you guys, you've really got the passion. And we'd say, yeah, but you can't eat it. And so that was some of the, you know, we were still, you know, off farm earning money and, you know, shearing sheep. We at our top, we shore 100 bales of sheep, 100 bales of wool, fine wool. And, so, and we came from a marketing background, so we just kept on trying to find the way that we could get this out to the general public as well.
Yeah, and kudos to you for having that resilience and sticking to this conversation, because I know it's hearing even Helen and Hugo's story about what this, you know, it was all woo-woo stuff. It was all crazy, you know, go to the conference, like go in that corner, you know, do your little thing. And now it's kind of like, you know, you're still running conferences, and there is one that's coming up, you know, soon. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's interesting to see the shift that's happening, because I almost feel like there's a massive demand now where it's actually moving so fast that we kind of have to slow it down a little bit, because legislation might not have caught up, and there's I's not being dotted and T's not being crossed. So we're at this kind of like tipping point where the whole carbon farming and carbon offsetting scheme and the price of carbon is going up. Like, how is the industry feeling to you right now?
Look, there's an amazing amount of interest. And not only that, there's this huge amount of money, you know, from corporates and things like that. Not that we've got corporate money, you know, we've joined with another company that is very like-minded now. But when I sit in the Carbon Market Institute's Carbon Farming Forum only yesterday, you know, the talk is about how much money there is sitting around, but it's dotting those I's, crossing those T's. We're a early industry. It's not deep or wide. The pioneers, who are the ones who have started this, they're still pulling the arrows out of their backs. And that is, you know, as you go from an industry and you go through those first set of oh, this is, rubbish and it's not going to work. And then you move to more sophisticated things. So I think that the sophistication is growing, the demand, like the companies that need to do something about climate change, and they've got their environmental sustainability goals, their ESGs, and all of those things that they have to meet. How are they going to meet them without the farmers? So we are constantly just trying to reinforce the farmers are the VIPs in this, the farmers are the VIPs in this, the farmers are the VIPs in this, because we do have some risks with all of this money, and the corporates will come and go, yep, no problem. We'll suck carbon straight out of the air. We'll use these huge machines that will cost a lot of money to build. We'll scrub it, and then we'll put the carbon back down into the soil, sure, but down really, really deep in some wells, and then hope like hell that it doesn't come back up and won't do any good at all. So it's one of our other defining drivers, is to try and help farmers and the industry to get to the point where it is more feasible, it is more understanding. We still have the rigor, we still have all of those things, but it started out fairly complex. So, it's just taking that time to develop and evolve is what I call it, to evolve.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that it's 15 plus years of this and we're still early and still evolving, which is kind of great, because I think it's good that people can still shape this in a way that works for farmers, that works for industry, that works for government. We're there. It's still innovative and not stuck in its ways. And so the other thing that kind of comes to mind, you spoke about, there's a lot of companies that need to do something for climate change. And this is one of the conversations that happens with me speaking to regenerative farmers, is they feel this sense of like, I'm doing all the hard work and I'm sequestering carbon, and it's just allowing another company to be bad and pollute and continue on their certain ways. Is it solving the problem of reducing the carbon emissions because the price of carbon is going up? Like, is it moving all the needles in the right direction, or is it being exploited?
Yeah. That is one of the really sort of controversial, or let's just say challenging things at the moment. So how do we ensure that? And it's a really big conversation to make sure that it is doing. Now, in Australia, in our policy, we were under the Gillard government, which is where it started, the companies were to have a cap on how much they could emit. And then if they emitted above that, they had to buy credits. And each year or each period, whichever it was going to be, that cap was to get lower and lower. And that is how you drive that. Now, under the current policy that we're under, and we have what's called a safeguard mechanism, but the problem is it's not being ratcheted down. They are not being forced to do that. And in fact, if they go above their emissions, they are able to create their own carbon credits. So, it's a really big one that has to be resolved, so that we know that those people are not just being able to buy a credit and then keep on polluting. There is a period of time, Ray, while the renewable energies come on board, while the machinations of business that are so slow change their ways. And so there is an argument for farmers assisting those industries to at least allow them to store their carbon for them for a period of time. But unless we get to that point whereby businesses are forced to ratchet down the amount that they are allowed to emit, we will have that argument, I believe.
Thanks for sharing that, because I actually didn't know that that's how the original legislation, and that makes kind of sense. It's like, well, here's your bench line, your baseline, and you're incentivized to drop that while offsetting anything you go over. And I think that is a nice pathway to achieving the reduction and allowing to offset as well. And it's interesting to know that over the years it's changed, whether that's industry pushing that to say we don't want to be forced to ratchet down, which that's the elephant in the room. You know, it's like if you're doing bad, then you need to be accountable for it. It's just it's good to know that it was there. And I always think that like if there's a model that worked and it was there initially, it's much easier to go back to that place as well. So maybe, you know, it's taken off for a little while to increase people to come in, and then it can always be introduced later.
Yeah. A cap and trade. It's called a cap and trade. It's got, and there are various forms of it, and it's got precedent overseas. I think you'll find if there's a change of government that will be one of the policies that's just sort of flowing underneath the bridge at the moment. You know, nobody wanting to sort of put their heads up just at the moment to say what they might or might not do.
Yeah, I love that. And so with so much industries getting involved and people talking about carbon, do you think this is going to become like a commodity that people do start trading on commodity markets, and like is that just going to push the price up astronomical? Because we've seen a bit of a price jump even just this year. What can you talk to about the price?
Yeah. So look, I could tell you exactly why the price did what it did, but it'll take a little bit of time. But that price will recover. Let's just say that the price was $50. At $50, there's a lot of interest. And Adam Brandt was on the CMI Carbon Farming Forum yesterday. He was saying that they'd put a price in of 50. Now, when they did it the first time with the Gillard government, it was 26. So, you know, there are expectations around that price. And once you get to that price, you get a lot of interest from farmers. People have always said it will take, you know, a certain amount of a price signal for that to happen. And so, you know, that has happened. We've had a price decrease. The thing that will drive it up is that demand. You know, where are those millions of companies, you know, worldwide, where are they going to get their offsets from? Even if a cap and trade comes in, even if they lower their amounts, their lights and their, you know, they do everything they can to lower their own emissions. Internally, they're still going to need offsets from somewhere else. And of course, the beauty of Australia is we have so much sun and we've got so much land. You know, we're a bit of a no-brainer for the rest of the world to look at us and go, you know, we're not Singapore. You know, poor old Singapore, imagine them trying to develop their own credits, you know, really, really hard. That it puts us in a very good position. And again, why we should just make sure that we're part of this evolution of this industry, and we don't just let I call them the corporates. I hope that's not being rude to anyone, but you know, the larger companies who are willing to sort of do anything, whereas we're willing to improve our carbon. One point about this particular enterprise called carbon farming, there is none other that I know of, Ray, where a farmer, let's say he plants trees and he sequesters the carbon in the trees, he has got more shade and shelter. And in the soil carbon space, he's got much better soil health, and he can sell the carbon. There's no other enterprise that I know of where you can sell the product, which is CO2, but keep the benefit on farm. So the farmer sells the CO2 from the trees. He's still got the trees on farm. He's still got the shade and shelter. Now, that's the really good side of it, yeah? Just ask a farmer, would you like to sell a product and actually keep the benefits on farm? You know, it's like sell your cow, but you still got your cow on the farm. Doesn't happen. And all the carbon gets taken off in the cow, in the hide, and those sorts of things. So, you know, it's a little special little enterprise when you think about it that way.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, you know, just to remind the soil lovers of what you mentioned at the start is that each one of those leaves that's on a tree or on a plant is a solar panel collecting the sun's energy, turning that into carbon and doing all the heavy lifting if we just let it do what Mother Nature always intended. Soil lovers, we're going to take a quick break, but we're going to get right back soon. We're going to talk about, if you're a farmer, how you can get started in maybe some of these carbon farming projects. Stick with us. Soil lovers, you're hanging out with Louisa and Regenerative. We're talking all about carbon. Louisa, I want to shift gears a little bit. You alluded to the fact that a farmer could plant trees and get the shade benefits of all the positives of doing carbon farming, but there's always this bit of concern with like, how do you get started? There's baselining, you need to pay up front. Do you go through aggregators? Do you have any tips for our soil lovers and our farming community on what to look for and how to go down this pathway and feel safe and secure? Because it is a bit of a concern when I've spoken to farmers in the past.
It's really important, Ray, and it's why I'm and the segue. It's why I'm mounting my 10th Carbon Farming Conference and Expo. So it is a sense. So what I attempt to do is bring all of those people and all of that evolution that's happening. And you're right. There's pushback on certain things. The methods aren't necessarily simple. Therefore, you've had to have people like Carbon Farmers of Australia to assist you to do that. Some of those business models have not necessarily been farmer-centric, in my view. And farmers are starting to sort of go, but wait a minute, okay, so I might have to use a middleman because I don't want to do all that paperwork and it's complex and regulatory holes or mistakes, which is, one of the main things that project developers do. But I don't like that one over there. I don't like the way he's doing it, and I don't like this one. And so now what is happening and what we will showcase is the latest in business models, let's call them, for farmers to be able to get in. Now, on the lingo and the ACCUs and, what's a method and those things, we run a half-day program, Carbon 101, on the first day, and we also have an advanced section at the end. So I know it's a commitment, but at the end of that commitment, and I say it to the people that are calling me up all the time, we've got some resources on our website as well. But another bee in my bonnet, Ray, is why has there been no education? Why has the TAFE system not got courses that are how to get into a project, how to become a project developer if you want to, and what are the risks and returns from doing it yourself? Every single farmer can do one of these methods by themselves. No problem. The only thing that's stopping them is that complexity. And the federal government have started to, I love it when governments streamline things. Often it's sort of a two-edged sword, but they have streamlined the tree planting method, trying to get farmers, into this particular method. And then you run up against the costs of tree planting, the costs of soil testing. But the federal government has got a number of different programs to assisting all of this. They're sort of throwing a stack of money. And that is because soil carbon managed to be one of Minister Angus Taylor's 5 technology roadmap things. Hydrogen, something, all of which are highly technical, and soil carbon. And so because we're on that roadmap, because the soil lovers and soil carbon are on that roadmap, we're getting a lot of attention. We're getting budget, but it is just ramping up, but it bodes well. And so I will bring as many of those sort of different things. Biodiversity credits, it's a big buzzword at the moment. So plant a tree, but also get a biodiversity credit because you'll and especially if you find a bilby, oh man, that's huge, or a frog, or any of those sorts of things. So that is the reason why I bust a gut basically to bring the best conference that I can.
Yeah, I love that. And the fact that there's going to be so many people under the one roof all talking about similar things and asking questions and being able to, ask questions, better questions, challenge things and work out how it works. And I think that's, you make a really good point in the whole education side of things, carbon pathways should be part of like ag courses. It is a revenue stream and quite lucrative to some farmers. We've had a couple of case studies now in Australia where some large amounts of carbon have been sold off to big corporations, and you'd almost think that that's a good revenue, or the cream on top of the hard enterprise that farmers tend to be slogging against, and the costs of everything is going up. And so, it is another revenue stream. You don't need that off farm job if you can kind of think about carbon as another stream as well, So just thinking about it differently. And my biggest tip to everyone is always like, if you're not registered for it, you can never benefit from it, and there's so many regenerative farmers out there that are doing good and caring for the land and being great stewards. And that's awesome. But if in 10 years' time you think, oh, now I want to go and get the carbon credits, if you've never registered for it, it's too late. So are there plans to kind of go retrospectively to carbon, like using digital satellite imagery and things like that?
Look, it goes against all the rules at the moment. It goes against the rules of what is universally worldwide called additionality. But that sort of difficult bit has come in, which is you cannot be paid unless you register. You're so correct there. But in the case of soil carbon, you just have to apply to register now, and then you can do your soil tests. And your soil tests, yes, soil lovers, they are expensive. But again, Minister Taylor is determined to get that cost down because he said he will. And if they win government again, there'll be scrutiny on him, because of all the things that we've said before. Lots of people are willing to put scrutiny on this new enterprise and things. So, there are moves towards that. But my view about the soil tests are that they're terribly informative as well. We go down to a metre when we do them. That's meant to be the really deep, non-labile carbon. It's not circling back into the atmosphere. It's going deeper and deeper, which is where coal comes from. After all, it's carbon that's just been buried for a very long amount of time, and then we dig it up. It's a really good point to make. And all we ask is get yourself understanding it. What are the ups and downs of it? Are you willing to do it? Do you understand that if you're increasing it now and you're not registered, you can't be paid? Simple things like that. I don't want anyone to do anything that they're not well informed about, Ray, but it's about getting yourself informed.
Agreed. And that way, at least you can make an educated decision and not look back 10 years later and go, oh, I wish we would have done that. And I've seen so many case studies lately where there's a regenerative farm down the road to a conservation park, and the conservation park's getting millions and billions of dollars to put a fence around and protect it. And then all of a sudden, a wildlife is being found on the regenerative farm that has no protection around it, has no, conservational protection.
Yeah.
And because the regenerative farmer is bringing that biodiversity in, like what you said before, if you find a frog and you find a bilby, there is some massive amounts of capital sitting there in your biodiversity credits and what they call in natural capital. So I agree, be educated, get understanding of it. Don't be scared away from it to go, oh, this is too hard, I don't understand. I think if you are saying that, that's more of a reason why you should get around people who are talking carbon, listening to podcasts like this, go on YouTube. There's lots of information. The Soil Learning Centre has been talking about carbon for who knows how long with all the speakers that we've had in our back end. But the conference, which is coming up, is probably another great place. What are some of the topics that are going to be lined up at the conference and speakers? And you run these annually. So I think talking about this, even though this podcast might be, someone might be listening to it in a few years' time, or you run them regularly. Maybe, you have to run them more regularly as the interest goes up. But what can people expect at the carbon conferences?
Yes. So look, we cover as much as I possibly can in all of those areas. So, we have a workshop on the lingo and how to get going, so that when you come in to the first day, you've got an idea. What's an ACCU? What's a method? What can we do? And then we set the scene on the first day with things like the international and domestic climate policy mechanisms and trading options. We've got an update on that from the Carbon Market Institute. We've got farmers coming who talk about their experiences. Lorraine Gordon, a very well-known farmer and educator. So I don't want to get her university wrong, but she comes from that university. Meat and Livestock Australia will come and talk to us about what the heck they're doing about their carbon neutral by 2030. We cover what's happening in the soil carbon measurement space. We follow what the CSIRO are doing in the space. We've got CSIRO coming. We've got developers talking, the alternatives for the ag sector, which include biodiversity, stewardship. We talk trees because there's a number of different tree programs coming up. We talk demand. Where is demand coming from? And we talk about the international scene. Is the ERF the be-all and end-all of carbon trading programs? Let's push this government a little bit and say, well, if you don't give us a really good ERF method, what can we do that's international? The Paris Agreement Article 6 is the one that's starting to get us ready in order to be able to trade internationally. And then what opens up for farmers, what we want to show can open up for farmers is, yes, there's a domestic system at the moment. There might be an international system. What about mixing and matching? What about, but again, maybe that will introduce some complexity, and how will we sort of manage those things as well? But not only carbon is a diversification of your income, but you can diversify your carbon within that, for tree carbon and soil carbon and potentially biodiversity and things. So it's a matter of trying to look at what we do is try and look at the whole farm and look at what's there right at the moment, and look at what is coming as well, so that they can get started straight away if that is what their choice is. But also be aware that this is evolving. Farmers are the VIPs. Farmers are the VIPs. Farmers are the VIPs. If I could get that through their heads, I would be. I would. They need to stand up and sort of say, wait a minute, we control 58% of the land mass, and the soil lovers would be well attuned to that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, is the more people that get in this industry and understand it, it creates more power behind the people. There's more ideas, more diversity of I'm always a big believer in this space that we need biodiversity of people. There could be someone who hasn't thought about this. They come up with this new innovation of how to increase carbon on the farm. And carbon in the soil increases fertility, increases your resilience. Like, there are so many byproducts that come from building up carbon in your soil. Like, we may get to a point in the future where the nutritional value of food is what you're paid for, not the kilos, And so, what a better way to plan for the future when we might have food shortages or scarcity, and we need to have highly nutritionally based food, and maybe buying apples by the kilo won't be the way that we buy food in the future. And if you're setting yourself up, then you're on that pathway of success. The resilience to drought and fire and flooding is all a byproduct of building up carbon and having trees and a good, strong biodiversity on your farm. So I look at it without access to farm and I think, wow, this is amazing, and so that's why I'm getting more involved in farming projects and hanging out in carbon, conferences like this. So Louisa, what's the website that people can come and look at the program and see the speakers and buy their tickets?
Yes, the program is simply www.carbonfarmingconference.com.au. Go and have a look, see if it's for you, see if you can learn anything, and come and say hi if you do.
Excellent. And I will be there as well. So you get to come and say hello to me as well. We'll be recording podcasts and it'll be a super fun time. I want to get to our signature question. Louisa, are you ready to become the voice of our soils?
Ray, now, you've given me approximately 3 minutes to think about it prior to coming on. And look, do you know one of my favourite ones that embody it is the YouTube 2-minute piece where Edward Norton is I Am the Soil. And, we started our conference with that in 2019, and then there was COVID, which is, why we've only got one now. If I was the soil, I would say, I'm hurting, why have you done this to me? Here I am trying to feed you, trying to, and seemingly forever forgiving. When you look at what some farmers farm on, 1% carbon, 3/4 of pumpkin growers on 1%. How can we expect the food? If I'm the soil, how can you expect the food that I'm meant to, be providing you to have all the nutrients that you need when you're robbing me of the very thing that I need? One of the KPIs, which is carbon. I understand there's other ones, but it's a really good driver of soil health. And so, I would just say, wake up. and the words that Edward Norton used right at the end, I think is fantastic. And he says, so I suppose you'd still like to eat.
Yep.
And ain't that great? What, you think you can have hydroponic everything? And, so, that's, and also it rewards you when you do it. If you're a gardener, gardeners are constantly putting sources of carbon, on compost, mulches, all sorts of things. It's just gardening at a big scale to get the carbon back.
I love that. Some of the words you said there was amazing, and really felt that, that the soil is hurting and that we're robbing it of its nutrients and we're not allowing it to thrive. And I kind of thought of the song of you get knocked down, but I get up again, because you said something along the lines of I keep on giving and I'm forgiving. Doesn't matter how bad you treat me like dirt, but I forgive and I get up and I still try to nourish you. What a beautiful asset that we have, and we just take it for granted. And I love the fact that more and more people are realizing the power in our soils and how we are all part of carbon cycles, and very excited about the future that you have laid a great foundation for as well. People like yourself and all the greats before us, and Helen, you go with Farming Secrets, really, having that resilience, and lots of people who have played a big part of that. So thank you so much for becoming the voice of our soils today.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray.
No worries. Well, soil lovers, there you have another great episode. We all talked about carbon. I really encourage you to dig deeper into this wonderful world of carbon. Get along to the Carbon Conference if you can come along. Louisa, will there be a video recording of it or a streaming package or anything like that?
Absolutely. We have virtual seats, but you won't get the full experience. So certainly come in person to ask all those difficult questions. 30 exhibitors waiting to tell you how fabulous they are and how they can help you and your soils.
Excellent. Well, carbonfarmingconference.com.au, go get your tickets. If you are an international listener, maybe get the replay, get the virtual conference. I think it's, being in there and getting something is better than nothing. But I think we're still very early to this conversation of carbon, and I'm really excited to see where this goes over the next few decades. So on that note, thank you, soil lovers, for hanging out with us for another great episode. Louisa, thank you very much for making the time, and best of luck for all the conference organizing. And I can't wait to meet you in person, especially after 2 years of no physical events. I'm so excited.
That's it. Thank you so much.
No worries. Soil lovers, get outside, get your hands dirty, and keep digging deeper into our wonderful world of soils. I'm Regenerative. We'll see you next time. Well, soil lovers, that's enough secrets for one episode. I really hope that you enjoyed all the secrets shared during this conversation. But hey, let's not keep it a secret. Please share this podcast around and make sure that you like it and leave us a review, because that really helps spread the secrets of the soil. Until next time, remember, get outside, get your hands dirty, and keep digging deeper into your soils.